Now, Empowered Soul Network. I'm here with another incredible empowered soul. Her name is Sheila Wood, and she is an intuitive healing coach. She has a PhD in clinical pathology. She's an author, she's a channeler, a medium. She uses all those gifts to help people all over the world. Just want to welcome you today to Empowered Soul Network, Sheila.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So take us on a little bit of a journey. I always loved, Sheila, to start with where people come from that led them to become who they are today and what their service is and so forth. So take us back. What started you out on the journey, the challenges you had, the sensitivity, and I know the work you do. I'm sure you're very sensitive as a child and all that. So take us back a little bit.
Well, I started kind of late in life with studying metaphysics. I was actually a scientist. I had a 45-year career in science. And about 12 years before I formally retired from science, I started reading and studying about metaphysics. The trigger for me was, well, I had a friend who was an energy healer, and I knew that that sort of work was valid because she had done a lot of work on me and my son as well. So I had some time on my hands because I was on a contract job. I was away from home. I didn't have any other responsibilities. And I picked up the book, The Field by Lynn McTaggart. Some of you may be familiar with this. And in it, she described basically the scientific basis for energy healing. So two of my parts came together, my scientific background and the fact that I did know that energy healing was valid and that it worked. So from that point on, I couldn't stop reading. I couldn't stop studying. I couldn't stop delving. I couldn't stop meditating. I was just hooked. And even though it did come late in life, it has blossomed into something that I truly enjoy. And I truly enjoy working with others as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. So before you were as the scientist, person in that field, what were you experiencing that the energy healing work began to help and began to shift? What were some of the challenges that you personally were going through that? And I ask that because it helps people to have hope that, hey, boy, I go through that similar kind of thing or parallel thing, and here's somebody that actually moved forward with that. So can you describe
Yeah.
some of those?
Yeah, well, as a female scientist in a competitive environment, I found myself often, toe to toe with a lot of people, and sometimes had to fight for my rights. And that was a strength builder in me. But when I got to the point where I was sort of stabilized, I was raising a son, and I was living in New Jersey, working at a hospital in Philadelphia and had some stresses. I just sometimes would be overcome with panic and stress and anxiety and had a little bit of depression. My son was going through some changes in his life as we discovered that not only did he have ADD, but he was also bipolar. He had bipolar symptoms. He was bipolar 2 in diagnostic terms. So there were some challenges with that, and we were daily confronted with incidences that would come up. Lisa was a friend that I met. She's the mother of a friend of my son's. So my sons were friends, and we became friends. And her son was diagnosed with Asperger's. And she had been working on him from the time he was in elementary school and, helping along the way. And he was fairly, highly functional. So with my son's episodes, she was there for us. And I could watch my son come down from a manic episode as she was working on him in about 30 minutes. That was how effective she was. And I thought this is really something that I need to treasure, because I felt my stress relieved knowing that she was there for him. I felt like she could come and intervene with me whenever I was overwhelmed. So those sorts of things helped me tremendously.
Yeah, that's what one of the themes that I find, Sheila, is there's always that something or someone that begins to help turn the corner of things,
Yes.
right? Sounds like you found that. So when you were actually experiencing the healing or right after, how would you describe the shift of your mind and the feeling in here? How would you describe that feeling that you came to?
Um, well, people who have experienced anxiety know the sniggling that continues. It's a continuous thing. It's not just an episode of anxiety. Anxiety lives within you. So when I knew it was time to see her, when I was at my maximum, I would go and she would work on me, and I would just feel everything lift off of me. It was like a heavy weight just sort of lifted off and floated away, and I felt light, much lighter, because all that energy that I really did not need had been released. And it was no longer something that was useful to me, so I didn't need it, and it went away. So I could feel the energy in me shift. I could also see the results in my
Hmm.
son.
Yeah, and so again, to help people see the value of that, when you got done with the healing process and your next action, either it was the next day at work or that evening at dinner or whatever, how did you find that impacting your actions and your next ventures out after the healing? What was shifting?
Well, whenever you release a lot of that anxiety, what happens is your clarity comes back, your mental clarity, your focus comes back, your purpose comes back. The worries are gone so that you can move forward much more easily, and much more confidently than you could when you had that worry in your mind and in your essence. And so I moved again through my career. I was really career oriented, focused a lot on accomplishments, and that part of myself was, I was fairly driven in that regard. Um, Looking back, I know I sort of neglected other parts of myself. For example, you know, my spirituality, I didn't take care of it until years later in life. And then I sort of jumped into it and thought, yeah, this is where I should have been for many years. But I know how to appreciate it now.
It sounds like and feel free to speak more to this, but it sounds like when I release those things that are holding me in, whether it's anxiety, the worry, whatever it is, and just become more relaxed, suddenly that direction, starts to open up more. I begin to resonate with the purpose and the passion and the energies that are truly calling to me. Whereas before they're tiny voices, now suddenly the voices of that change are much stronger and louder. Is that a way to describe it?
That's a way to describe it. And I also, looking back, know that I was led. I felt spirit leading me in different directions. I knew when I moved, my career was away from I mean, now in North Carolina, my career was away from North Carolina for years. When I moved back here, I became involved with a group who had an excellent mentor, Bob Benz, who taught me mediumship. And at that point, I had no idea what I was doing, but I felt led and I felt I was in the right place. And as things progressed, I got a lot of good feedback from that. Felt good because I could help people communicate with loved ones on the other side, which is tremendous. and sort of also walked into the Akashic Records part of that, knowing that I had something now that I could actually help people with. And that, I firmly believe, was led by spirit, and also all the learning. I feel like every time I'm ready for something additional to learn, I am pointed in that direction. And I know for sure that spirit is there.
Yeah, there's that old saying that, they say that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But, I've come to also, like you just said, when the teacher's ready, the student appears. There's that
Yes.
engagement of things. What would you say, looking back here the last year or two, maybe as a top one or two or three things that, and working with all these people that you've learned that help you continue to grow and expand?
Um, I've realized that there are elements of what I do that can help a select portion of the population. And I'm really, really excited about this. This has become my intense passion at this point. But I realized in some of the clients that I was working with who had had a history of sexual abuse, that as I released energy from them as an energy healer, it was it took longer. It was more difficult to come off. And I decided that perhaps I needed to go to the Akashic Records and see if I could release energy from previous or prior generations within the same family. So, what I realized in doing that is when a lot of that energy came off from past generations, it was much easier to release it from this incarnation. And I thought, well, that tells me something. That's a buildup, that's a buildup of embedded energy. What I've learned since I've started studying the effects of sexual assault is that people don't want to talk about it. They're very ashamed of it. They try to bury it. They try to bury the
Mhm.
emotions around it, and they do not want to realize that it needs to be processed. What was happening was generations and generations and generations back had done the same thing. Nobody had talked about it. Those emotions had been buried. And when they started coming off, the lifetime in this incarnation was greatly benefited from that. So, my passion and my message now is, this is a great tool, and this is something that could help others move forward in their journeys as well. So that's something that has happened recently for me.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. And I had a good friend of mine that in his work, he describes healing as the restoration of life force. The
Yes,
restoration, and I hear that's what you're saying, is that the entire life force of the existence of that soul, that spirit, is a part parcel to everything that's happening.
right,
So
exactly. And a lot of the scholars in the area really emphasize that healing in this regard, as it pertains to sexual assault, has to take place at the biopsychosocial level. In other words, it's biologically affected. The person has a dysregulation of their hormones, and other things happen with the brain. It's psychologically affected because of all the emotions around it and not wanting to open up and talk about it. And socially, of course, we have all sorts of pressures in our environment, in our society, in our civilization that say, uh, that's not something we want to talk about. So, there are all sorts of things that interest me about it, but I identify and see the struggle that these women are going through. I myself have not experienced sexual assault. However, I found out late in life that my mother had when she was a child after I became a medium. And I grew up in that energy. I grew up in those suppressed emotions. I grew up with a mom who was emotionally all over the place all the time. and took those feelings with her as she transitioned. She never talked about them, never processed them, never dealt with them. So the energy stays, the energy is there. And the more and more we can be open about it and release that energy, the better off we're all going to be, because it affects the survivor. It also affects the families. It affects society at large.
Yeah, and I know you have this, but speak to it a little bit. People that you can also, as you're working with them, you can tell that they have their own intuitive sensitivity, their own empathic abilities, their own things. What do you say to people that you recognize they have these awarenesses or outright gifts or feelings and so forth that are trying to harness it but don't know how to do it?
I start with basics, and I encourage someone who is just beginning to feel these feelings or just starting out. I think journaling is a treasure. I think that gets your emotions out onto the paper. Whereas, you may not want to talk about, you may not want to think about. Once you start writing and journaling, it comes out, and that's precious. I also advocate meditation. I think meditation is a technique that puts you more in touch with your inner soul, with your core, with your being, and also is very calming. Um, so spending time with yourself is nurturing as well. So I start with the basics, and then I feel like community is very important to someone who starts on a spiritual path. Community of people who are also starting on their own journey, and the exchange of ideas and information. That to me is one of the more nurturing things on a spiritual journey. And sometimes it takes time to find your peeps, to find your tribe. You kind of have to search for it. But looking for a social group where you feel comfortable expressing yourself, I think is key.
That's just awesome wisdom there, Sheila. I know one of the things that I've found in my work is that there are so many people that feel alone,
Yes,
outside their, they don't know that other people may feel the same. Their next door neighbor could be feeling the same thing. They don't know about it because they're afraid to talk about their intuitiveness or the dream that came true last night or whatever. And sometimes there's the stigma, of somebody's going to think I'm crazy, if I do this. So that community thing is just so powerful to feel like that, I'm normal. I'm not crazy. Being psychic is not my imagination. It's
right,
real,
right.
so.
Yeah, and I'm working with one group who is concerned about uh, what is termed spiritual emergencies.
Mhm.
And this is actually a phenomenon where people are inundated with a lot of feelings, impressions, sightings, and they hear things, and it's just they're overwhelmed. They're just overwhelmed with spiritual um, phenomena that are happening around them. They do not understand it. They think they're going crazy. Um, and what we're doing is trying to nurture the expression before it gets to the point where it's a spiritual emergency. Nurture the expression of experiences, be open, be supportive, and don't be afraid to step forward with what's happening. Once that support is made available, hopefully there'll be less spiritual emergencies because they can be very sort of uh, a problem in your life, and in your job and in your daily interactions with people.
Sure, sure. As we wrap up here, my favorite thing is a two-part question I love to ask because it gives people a sense of hope and value and looking at themselves differently. What would Sheila of today say to the Sheila of 20, 30 years ago?
Slow down, just slow down and nurture yourself. I because I was in that energy with my mom, and I had trouble connecting with her, and I had trouble feeling like I was appreciated. I went at Mach 4 with my hair on fire for years and should have said, stop, take a look at yourself, nurture yourself, grow from the inside out, not from the outside in, because that is the most important thing for your soul.
Seeing the polarity of the second part of this, what would the Sheila of 30 years ago say about the Sheila that she would be observing of today?
I think there would be a row of question marks, and and there would be the question, oh, well, what is the end point here? And and that's really not a valid question because it's a process. We're moving. We're not looking at the end point. We're just growing. So there would have been a lack of understanding, which is to say that sometimes years are important in a person's life because it means evolution and evolution in thought and heart and actions. So we all are on a journey. We can't criticize each other for being at a certain point, but hopefully, what I'm experiencing now can be experienced by other people as well, because I am really enjoying it right now.
Beautiful, beautiful. Sheila, thank you so much for all this. How can people reach out to you and get in touch with you?
Um, I have a website,
Okay.
and it is sheilajwood.com. And my email address and my phone number are on that website. Um, Also, if anybody is interested in, I have a 10 module intensive around sexual assault survival. So
Okay.
I would be quite willing to talk about that. The modules can be viewed at sheilawood.coach.
Well, folks, lots of opportunity to connect with Sheila Wood. Amazing soul doing amazing work. Empowered soul. Another empowered soul, you guys. We're just building the community, changing the world, one soul at a time. So there you go, Empowered Soul Network. Sheila, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here.
Stick around for just a moment. We'll end the recording and chat. Take
Okay.
care, everybody. See you a little bit later today.